Coming up on the Empowered Woman podcast.
If life energy is in everyone and everything, which it is, why do our social systems not reflect that? And how can we build social systems based on life energy? And it ends with something called collective power. Because I've built collective power in organizations, in my classrooms, in the male prison. I've done it so many places and I see it work every single time.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on visibility strategies for women entrepreneurs. If you want to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice and business, you're in the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, professional singer and visibility strategist. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode.
Looking for the perfect gift that inspires confidence and joy? Me is All I Want to Be by Elizabeth Brunner is a children's book that celebrates individuality, creativity, and self-acceptance. Give the kids in your life a gift that lasts longer than toys or trends, the gift of self-love and confidence. Find the book on Amazon. The link is in the show notes. Hi, Suzanne. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Marta.
Yay. I am so excited to learn more about your work. I know you have so many amazing things out there to support people. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
I am Suzanne Roberts. I own my own company called Unifying Solutions, and I've been coaching and consulting for over 5 decades. So that's great. I'm a master somatic coach, which is a little bit different. I also bring an intersectional lens into my coaching to help leaders unpack the way they've been socialized so they can really be their authentic self leading. And I love working with teams and organizations. So
I love that. And 5 decades, my goodness. I always like hearing the backstory, and yours goes way back. I want to hear, how did you get into this? Tell us more.
Well, I have such an odd background, honestly. I started in pre-med, but just because my mother was a doctor and I was good at science, but I cannot look at a needle without fainting. So I was like 2.5 years in, and I was like, I can't go to medical school. What am I thinking? So I really didn't know what to do. I was also a modern dancer, and I was studying psychology, and I literally dropped out of school, which terrified my mother. And I went to California. I was living in Ohio, and I started studying independently, and I studied Jungian dream work. I studied Gestalt. I studied Feldenkrais. I also was dancing at the time. And then I went to massage school, and then I started studying polarity therapy and learning about which is basically what my book is based on, but how do the laws of energy. Back then it was related to health and healing, but I've applied it to human and social development. So I ended up writing my own program in holistic health 50-something years ago. How I came up with that, I have no idea. But I had to write a dissertation because I went through Antioch West, and I started my own business because I wanted to help people, but I was a unique thinker. And back then I didn't know what coaching and consulting exactly were, but I called it personal transformation. And over time, people started bringing me into their organizations and doing teamwork. And I'm like, do you know I'm not trained in teamwork? And they're like, we know you're not trained, but you're good at what you do. So then I thought I better get trained. So then I did go to Strozzi Institute, which is a coaching institute, and I became a master somatic coach. But I was already coaching, and I was already working with teams and organizations. And through my process at Strozzi, I became aware of intersectionality and the intersections of class, race, gender, religion. And then I did a project on women's leadership and did qualitative research and compared it to quantitative research. But the deeper dive I went into gender, I got into race. And so then I've done a lot of work around race. I'm often the white person that's brought into senior leadership to talk about racial equity and white supremacy because they can listen to me easier. And so I've had an evolution in my journey coaching and becoming more aware. and allowing myself to change along the way. So my business is called Unifying Solutions. I'm always working to unify and find solutions, and that name lasts for me while I'm evolving and changing.
Yeah, it's all encompassing. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing the journey. It's always interesting to hear the ups and downs and how, the winding roads that lead to where people are. And for you, like what you were saying back in the day, the coaching, the consulting, everything was so different. I know that in the world we live in, people are more used to the idea of a coach
Right.
on sports, right? Because that's what many people used to associate it with. And it's interesting to hear from someone that started even before this was a thing. And I love what you said. I was a unique thinker, and then I started my business. If that is not the definition of an entrepreneur, right? I have to create something completely different,
Yes.
which is my business, because I think so differently. That is
Yes.
incredible. For the people listening that are maybe not familiar, I think most people have heard the word somatic out there, especially my listeners. But what does that exactly mean? What does the work look like that you do with people in that capacity?
I think that's a great question, because I was already doing some of it before I went to Strozzi Institute, but somatic means working with and through the body. But what's in the body is the living self, our mind, our emotions, our mood, all of that. But our body holds our history in ways that we've learned to survive, and we're operating out of survival habits. So we might be bracing while we're leading and not being able to recenter in a grounded, present way. So part of what somatic coaching brings in is, what are some of the adaptive strategies psychobiologically that you've produced over time to keep you safe, that aren't serving you anymore in your leadership. Like, I could say I was working with this senior leader who's a man who was getting feedback that he was alienating because he came across too strong. And he's one of the most gentle, kind people I've met. But he had a really difficult father, and the way he survived his father was to come do this. And so he didn't even understand he was doing this. But this produces a message. It's like, I'm fighting against you, but that's not what he felt inside. So we had to work to, like, okay, what do you stand for that's not your survival history? And can you soften this and find your ground? And then everybody said, when he would practice that differently and be who he actually was, which was a kind heart and not his survival strategy, people noticed the difference right away. So he was getting feedback that who he feels he is on the inside was now producing on the outside. So that's an example of how somatics works.
Yeah, thank you so much for exemplifying, because I was going to ask, what does that look like? Can you give us an example of a client? And for those who are not watching the video and can just hear, you were using your body to convey like an attitude or a posture. And oftentimes people think it's what you say or how you say it.
Right.
And to your point, the body, right? How you use your body can also convey certain messages, and people can interpret it in different ways. So just that simple shift can make such a huge difference, but it takes having somebody outside of yourself to point it out. And that's what the whole coaching thing does, because we can't see it on our own. Oh, that is wonderful. So do you usually, so you said you work with teams, and that is a passion of yours. Do you also work one-on-one? Tell us how your work works.
I do many things, actually. I do work one-on-one. Especially like now I'm mostly working one-on-one because I'm in my 70s and I'm launching this book and the documentary. I am launching, because of the book, a new signature program for leaders called The Great Reconnection, the soul of leadership. And I'm doing that because I want to have people trained in this work so that we can shift how leaders lead and live. Just saying the word soul with leadership is like such a word that is like sounds taboo, but the soul is our living current in our body. It is the electrical current that lets our heart beat and lets us breathe. And it also links us to the source of life for all of creation. So inside of us, we have deep wisdom, deep clarity, deep knowing that we're part of an inner web of life. And if we're not accessing that, and we also have a self-renewing energy, if we're not accessing that when we're leading, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this whole program is to shift a model of leadership so that people have access to their deepest self, to their self-renewing energy, to their clarity, to their wisdom, and they're being led from a deeper knowing and building cultures from that place.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely want to talk more about how to access that, but I do want you to share with us about the book. And I love that you said, I'm in my 70s now and I'm promoting this and I'm doing that. And that's the fun thing about being an entrepreneur is that you have different seasons and you get to create it. Right now I'm focusing on this, but maybe next year I'll do something else. And you just, follow along with what you got going on in your personal life as well. Tell us about the book. What can people expect? The name,
So
I know the cover is so pretty.
If you're watching, it's such a beautiful cover that Claudine Mansour designed for me. The book is called It's Deeper Than That, Pathway to a Vibrant, Purposeful, and Liberated Life. There's 3 sections to the book. The first section is me, how I overcame my childhood sexual abuse through the living model of, I'm calling it the Great Reconnection now, but it was birthed out of polarity therapy, but basically that we're an energy system designed to remember the truth of who we are. The second section is you. And so there's 3 chapters that explain our ideal wireless pattern, what happens when the mind takes over, and how do we use the mind to become our ally in a way that we can have access to our deeper self. And then I go through a lot of distinctions about bias, outer seeking versus inner seeking, loneliness versus isolation, or longing versus wounding, all different, stillness versus sedation. Do you know the difference between still and sedate, right? So, and then the last section is called Everyone. If life energy is in everyone and everything, which it is, why do our social systems not reflect that? And how can we build social systems based on life energy? And it ends with something called collective power, because I've built collective power in organizations, in my classrooms, in the male prison. I've done it so many places, and I see it work every single time, where we can mimic the biodiversity of a forest. And I work with a lot of diversity because I believe we're healthier in diversity, just like forests. So I believe in enlivening diversity of life instead of who has value and who doesn't have value, which is human made. It's not life energy made. Life energy is in everyone and everything. So we all have value.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So many interesting concepts. And I love the parallel with nature because we are part of it. And sometimes I think we forget and we separate ourselves. And like what you said, human made and nature made. And the whole idea of us being energetic beings and accessing the things that we forget. And I truly believe that our journey here on this earth is to remember who we are.
Totally.
Concept.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's amazing. So people can find the book on Amazon. So it's called It's Deeper Than That. Where else is it available on? Hey, let me ask you a question. Would you like to be my next guest on the Empowered Woman podcast? Do you have a story you'd like to share? Want more visibility for your business on a show ranked in the top 0.5% in the world? Well, then head on over to martasburke.com/podcast guest for more information.
It's on Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I have a book portal with the book, which I love my book portal. It has meditations, teaching videos, a journaling book you can download, a disconnection quiz. We have a wisdom deck. The documentary is going to be on the book portal. But if you go to Unifying Solutions at the top, click on book portal, you can get into the book portal. You can also, it will take you to Amazon to order the book. And it comes in hardback, paperback, ebook, and I also have an audio book.
Oh, perfect. You got it all. And I do want to talk about the documentary, but first, because I have lots of authors come on the show, and I think it's fun to hear the journey of the book coming to life, because you said you've done dissertations and other things in the past. Is this your first book? And what was the reasoning behind doing it right now?
Well, my students were begging me to write a book, and I wrote for 6 years, and I had like 3 inches of material, but I couldn't figure out how to write it.
Mm.
And my son said to me, Mom, people aren't going to care about what you're talking about if they don't care about you. So then I put the me section of the book in, and then his grandmother, who's a world-renowned sociologist and author, she had a really bad fall, and I would go read to her from my writing in the rehab center, and she said, "Oh, this book is for me, you, and everyone." As soon as she said that, I was like, I could write the book now. And then I joined Sarah Cannell's writing boot camp, and in 90 days, my book was written. And she also explained you have to be a triple threat. And I'm like, I just want to write a book. But since then, now I'm on podcasts, and I have my own podcast, and I'm on social media. I was never on social media, but if I want people to hear these ideas to change our world, to make it to change us as human beings and make this world a better place, I want it to germinate globally. This isn't like, that's why I wrote the book. I want people anybody around the world that wants to have access to themselves and the deeper selves and remember the truth of who they are. This is a pathway and guide. So I want people, it worked for me.
Yeah.
It could work for anybody, and it's direct, and that's what I wanted.
First off, what powerful advice from your son to say people won't care about what you have to say if they don't care about you. Oh my gosh, if more people would realize that the story makes all the difference in building that rapport and the trust and the connection and really actually caring. Was it hard for you to share that vulnerably or not so much? How did that go?
Well, I actually had people help me figure how much to say because my story is really hard, and so I was it hard to share it? It was harder to know my kids were going to read it.
Okay. Than
to share it because I feel what I've been able to do. I'm vibrant. I'm happy. I'm alive, and the power of what I was able to restore myself with. I wanted other people to have access to that, but it was more. My kids and my son, my oldest son. My younger son read it along the way, but my older son just read the book. And he said, Mom, it was really hard. And I also can see what you've done because of it. But that was my most tender thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, they knew, but they didn't know. Right. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, totally.
It's in there. Now, then the thing was, how do I talk about it in the documentary? Because I can't say it out loud on the screen like it's in the book because you wouldn't listen to anything else.
Yeah. Right.
And so I worked with people to figure out how much do I say and how do I also not be remote when I'm saying it? Like, how can I say it with a certain level of feeling, but not too much feeling? It's been, and even with the audiobook, I had to work with the director. I told her the story ahead of time, and she said, I'm so glad you told me now. So when we got to that section, I did start to cry when I started reading it out loud. I was like, oh my God, this is intense. And then I was like, we all sat for a minute. And then she really coached me how to say it when you're listening to it so that, so it's been a lot of different things along the way of how to have it in the world, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Which I'm sure is part of healing and processing and also helping others too. And thank you for sharing all of that because I work with so many people that either say my story is not that interesting, I have nothing cool or crazy that happened to me, or people that have gone through very traumatic things and they're like, I don't want it to be a pity party. I don't want to bring people down, but that's not the point. And that's where finding what is interesting, what can people, and the other piece is sometimes people say to me, I don't want to publish my book because I need to wait until my parents pass away or, things like that, which obviously everybody has their own story and things that are happening. But to your point of, I need this to germinate and I need more people to have access to this. got to make some sacrifices and challenge yourself, right? Push yourself out of your comfort zone. And then you do the documentary, which, my gosh, for the people out there that are already struggling with the idea of publishing a book, I can't even imagine. So tell us about that.
Well, it's because like my, students have said to me, Suzanne, like they can't understand from a flyer, from this,
Yeah.
You have to, and if you want to leave a legacy, you have to do this. And so I said, okay, I'll make a documentary. I really wasn't thinking this documentary is going to be shown. I don't know what I was thinking. Do you know what I'm saying? So, but there is going to be a documentary, and it will, I believe, it does have a little bit of my story in it, but it really germinates the living reality of this wireless system that's inside of us. It's designed for us to remember the truth of who we are. And then it does talk about the awakening into being part of an inner web of life, and how we need to be responsible to that to build a different future. So it has all the different components of the book in a certain kind of way, but we also interviewed 14 people who, once they had access with that living energy inside of them, how life-changing it was for them. And so there is their accounting of it. So if there is going to be legacy about this work and a future generation, there needs to be a documentary. Mm-hmm. So that's how that happened.
Oh, that sounds so awesome, especially to hear from other people. Because that's where, people listen to these interviews and then they're like, well, I need to understand more. They could go to a website. If somebody has a book, that's even better. They can dive deeper. But if they have a documentary, you're just, taking it up a notch. That's even better. So that's amazing. How can people access the documentary? Tell us more. When is it going live?
Well, October 15th, we're having a book and documentary premiere in Columbus, Ohio, the Lincoln Theater, which if anybody's in Columbus listening, you're welcome to come. But you can get a ticket. It's all free, but you can get a ticket to live stream. We have quite a few people live streaming. A lot of people signed up. So you'll be able to live stream. And then once the documentary comes out, it will be accessible through the book portal.
Okay.
Perfect. So if you can't watch it that night, then you'll have access to it. So
amazing. Well, I'll make sure and put all of that in the show notes so people can access that. Tell us more about how can somebody connect with you to learn more about working with you, since you said you've been doing more one-on-one. Do they go to your website? How do you typically do that? Do you do like a discovery session?
I do a 30-minute complimentary coaching call. So if you go to the website, you can find it on there. Yep. I just don't remember where it is, but I think it's in the beginning. Schedule a complimentary call or something like that. But I always want to talk to people to see if we're a good fit. I love that.
Yeah, sounds great. We'll make sure and put that in the show notes as well. Well, before I have you share, and also I love that you said, I realized I needed to be on social media. I needed to be on podcasts. Because that's the other thing that a lot of people that are not, doing the circuit, especially after publishing a book, they don't understand how important that is. Yes. Even before you publish a book, but especially if you publish a book and you want more people to hear your message, and find what you're putting out in the world, it's important to make yourself visible. Before you share where you hang out the most, I like asking all of my guests my $1 million question.
What is it?
Okay. So Suzanne, what is an empowered woman to you?
An empowered woman to me trust who she is, or I'm going to use the word they, because women come in all kinds of ways at this point in life. Trust who they are, how they're made, listen deeply inside, take action from a meaningful place, and treasure and love their own life.
And is working on remembering.
Yeah, well, that would be treasuring. And if you treasure your own life, you're tuning into remembering, because you're considering yourself first. I don't think we can take action if we're not in a productive, really life-giving way, if we're not considering ourselves first.
Absolutely. That is so good. Well, thank you for the amazing work you're doing out there in the world. Tell us, where do you hang out the most? I know we just connected on LinkedIn, but where's the easiest place for people to go? Or maybe you're in many places. Tell us.
I'm in many places. I'm in Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So you can find me anywhere. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, I'll make sure we put all of that in the show notes. It was so lovely talking to you. Thank you for continuing your work and carrying it out there, and especially for us entrepreneurs that started a decade ago and not 5 decades ago. It's really inspirational to see you live and vibrant, like what you were saying, putting stuff out and encouraging people. So that is amazing. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure being with you. You've been an amazing host. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends, or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.